that Ayanda was relaying yesterday, talking about Mandela having a conversation with Elizabeth, and asked afterwards, who were you talking to? And he went and said, no, I was talking to the Queen Elizabeth. And they said, but why are you calling her Elizabeth? And he said, well, she's calling me Nelson, so I'm just calling her Elizabeth. So thanks to Ayanda Alipane for that story. I quite enjoyed it as well. So that's a beautiful photograph as well. All right, our picture of the former French president also meeting with his wife, Nelson Mandela. That's Nicolas Sarkozy meeting Mandela. And there is David Beckham, another soccer great, meeting Madiba. It's a beautiful photograph. And there you got another great photograph as well. Tony Blair and Bill Clinton helping Madiba at that time. So some photographs that we are showing you here. In fact, I've seen quite a few photographs that people have actually sent to me of them with Madiba. We're going to try and get them up on screen so that you can also have your moment to bask in your glory of having it shown to the nation, because it is a very proud moment to have met him. Well, as we have been crossing to Sam Marshall, who is outside the Houghton house of the former president, where the family is, and lots of people are going there, dropping off flowers, and it seems that this morning that is the fitness route of Gautengers. Everybody's cycling and jogging past there this morning. Sam Marshall, the crowd growing by the minute, I can see over there. What does it feel like being there? What's the atmosphere like outside of the Houghton home?
Good morning, Leanne, and good morning to the viewers again. That atmosphere, what you're talking about, is electrifying. There's something in the air here that, although it's very somber, people they obviously understand how serious the situation is. There's a jovialness here that's not a jovialness that is a shared love for the man that passed on at 10 to 9 on Thursday evening. Throughout the years, we've talked about Born Freeze, and we talked about this young and new generation of South Africans who will have to leave their mark. And we've seen a lot of youngsters come through this morning. But, I mean, the amount of little ones with their parents, the amount of children. I spoke to Njanji Chowke before I took over the shift, and he was talking about the amount of youngsters that were here on Friday night. Instead of going to nightclubs, they actually came here and they spent their time here. At the moment, I'm with a 15-year-old. Her name is Pendile Mtetwa, and she came all the way from Midrand to not only be here this morning, but in actual fact brought some candles. Pendile, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you feeling? I mean, you came all the way from Midrand, you lit a candle for Madiba. What did he mean to you?
Mandela was more of an inspiration to me because he made a difference in South Africa, and as a young girl, I'd like to grow up to be like that and make a difference in my country.
Obviously, your family, you've been watching the news, you've been watching it, you've never personally met him, but talk to me about that discussion at home. What is the discussion around the dinner table?
Well, when I found out about Mandela, we were all shocked because it came as a surprise. We knew, okay, he's old, sick, but we were kind of down-touched that, okay, he passed on, but he made a difference. That's all that matters, and we're happy about that.
Talk to me about that difference, because we often talk about it, and I think we underplay how important the youth are in the country. We talk about it a lot, though. But for me, as a 15-year-old, when you think of Madiba and you think of everything that's happened thus far, what legacy has he left with you? What is the thing that you'll remember the most about Tata Madiba?
The fact that he fought for our country and made our parents have the jobs that they have now, be free in our country, and made it possible for us to have a future.
Why a candle? Why didn't you bring flowers? There's nothing wrong with the candle, but why did you decide to light a candle here today?
To pay my final respect, because, okay, flowers, yes, they could die out. Also, a candle could die out, but it takes time.
It takes time. Pendile Mtetwa, thank you very much for joining me. That's Pendile Mtetwa. Came all the way from Midrand. She's 15 years old, wanted to be here today, spend some time here. They're going to hang around for a bit, but she's not unique in that aspect. We've seen just so many youngsters, as I've mentioned before, coming through this morning, and of course we're expecting so much more. If you can just look at the amount of people that are lighting candles at the moment. We've just seen a little boy light a red candle. He's about to place that, put that down with his dad here. And that's kind of the scenes scenes we've been seeing throughout the course of this morning. The numbers have been trickling through. At one point, there was a large group, a large contingent of people here. It's dropped off a little bit, but that happens throughout the half an hours, on top of the hours. We see people coming through, larger groups coming through. This morning, we saw a huge group of athletes coming through as well. And what we're hearing from people are they getting their family members, they're getting their friends to join them here, to come and pay their respects together. And I think that's absolutely amazing, because over the last couple of days you would have seen the tweets coming through, the kind of impact this man has had, not only locally but internationally as well. And some of those people that have been tweeting are coming through. I've even had somebody that walked up to me and said, I've been tweeting at SABC News Online since Thursday, and I'm glad to see you guys are here. So we're going to go back to you. We'll find some more interesting people to talk to, and that of course will happen throughout the course of the morning.
Thanks very much, Sam. I'm loving hearing from the people out there. Well, I just saw something that is of great interest to many that live in this particular area. So if by any chance you do happen to go to Madiba's house to drop off some flowers, or you're in that area, and if you're not in that area planning a trip, perhaps this will convince you to do that. I've just seen an announcement by the Nelson Mandela Foundation Centre for Memory by its CEO, Selo Hatang, who has said that the Centre of Memory is going to be open to the public from 9 o'clock this morning as a place to share memories and to reflect of the life of the former President Nelson Mandela. They're saying that they've decided to just open it to members of the public who want to come. It'll be open from today until the 20th of December. They'll also be making space available for people who want to come and pay respects in making prayers, as the President announced tomorrow. You must go to central churches as well as to any town halls or whatever it was. So they'll make this a place available for members of the public to come in and just pray for the President over this time. So that's in Houghton. That's the centre, the Nelson Mandela's Centre of Memory. And what a beautiful, beautiful place it is to visit. I can assure you this is one place you do want to go and visit, and it is now open to the public over this particular time so that you can share in those beautiful memories and see things that you would never normally have access to when it comes to the life and times of the former president. Let's take a look at some more beautiful pictures and slides of the life and times. There you go, looking at some photographs. Let me just have a look at a couple more comments. Let's perhaps put up the website. We won't put up the website as yet, but I'll just have a look at one or two of the tweets that are coming through of what people are showing us. Cornelius writing in and saying, why don't the SABC show us the movie The Long Walk to Freedom? I mean, it's for the nation. Don't you think it's a great idea? I'm not sure that's going to happen, Cornelius, but if you haven't seen it, I think you must get down to your cinemas and have a look at that movie. I know it will, but I mean, I think there's a process to follow, that it's got to go through the cinemas first and then released, you know, through that process. But I can tell you that I can imagine what ticket sales are going to do at this time, because that movie is just, it's going to make you cry even more. I don't know if I could watch it right now, but it was a beautiful movie. there's just lots and lots of people writing in and telling us how they're feeling. But I have been joined again by Seth Cooper, who shared a cell block with Nelson Mandela. Seth's been around with us this morning, just sharing in a couple of memories and talking about psychology and what it was like in terms of being of strong mind when one does spend time on Robben Island, and his personal interactions with Mandela as well, and what he was like as a person. Just, Sats, again, thanks and welcome back. Just in terms of recapping for us, because I know that a lot of viewers have just perhaps woken up and tuned in. Your experience with Mandela, your thoughts and views of Mandela the man. What was he like? What is that impression he's left with you?
Mandela was a dignified person. When you saw him, you were immediately struck by the man. Not only was he physically striking, but his entire persona and demeanor was one that you immediately understood was something that you needed to take cognizance of and be respectful. He engaged with all prisoners, whether they were young in their early teens or in his own age cohort, and engaged with them as equals, even though he tended to adopt a certain fatherliness, if you like, to younger prisoners, and was intrigued by the difference that particularly the post-76 prisoners portended. There was a massive influx of people who were, well, mostly young people, who were protesting after June 16, 1976, and their numbers swelled the ranks of the older prisoners. And Mandela was very intrigued by that presence because for once he had the opportunity to interact with them. But unfortunately, he was isolated in this prison block where there were older prisoners until some of us got there in late 1977. And had cheek by jowl involvement on a daily basis, sharing highs and lows and being able to understand each other's positions. Mandela never really expressed anger. When he took exception at what you said, you would see that notorious sort of quiet hangdog expression. But he was also very quick to laugh at his own foibles. Very few amongst us can do that, but he had that ability.
Yeah, that's the truth. Now, Sass, before I let you go, just when you were released from prison, I mean, at the same time in 1994, when Mandela became South Africa's first democratically elected president, you also formed the Psychological Society of South Africa. What inspired you to do this?
Well, there were various colleagues from throughout the country who began to talk amongst themselves because we had different psychological formations. There was the Psychological Association, which was open to everyone, but still was significantly white male Afrikaner-led. And there were various other formations like the Psychologists Against Apartheid, Black Psychologists Forum, the Organization of Alternate Social Services. And colleagues came together and created in January 20th, 1994, long before our elections, a new body which is committed to a non-racial, egalitarian ethos, and also to ensure that psychology never again plays a political role that it tended to play in the apartheid era.
All right, Sats Cooper, thank you so much for talking to us here on Morning Live. It's been, well, not Morning Live, on this SABC special broadcast program. It's been absolutely wonderful having you with us and sharing with us in all of your memories and the time that you have spent with Madiba. Now, lots and lots of people writing in, and also lots of people, like we talk about somebody like entrepreneur Sir Richard Branson paid tribute to former President Nelson Mandela. He was speaking from his island, Necker Island, in the British Virgin Islands. Branson appealed to the world to celebrate former President Nelson Mandela's life.
I think it's just a life to be celebrated. I think we shouldn't, we shouldn't have any sadness. He wouldn't want us to have any sadness at all. He just led the most extraordinary life, and I think he hopes that that his legacy will continue with through organisations like the Elders that he set up to carry on his good work. And so I think it's a day to be celebrated, not a day to be sad.
You're still watching this special broadcast dedicated to the life and times of Tata Madiba, who passed away on Thursday evening at 10 to 9. President Jacob Zuma sharing the news with the nation just a few hours after the passing of our former president. Jessie Duarte is in studio with me to talk about Madiba. And Jessie, it's so lovely to have you. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you.
I keep saying Morning Live. This is definitely not Morning Live, but it's just an extension of SABC. But
yes.
let me just firstly begin by asking you how you're feeling at this time.
Well, you can never be quite ready for the death of someone that we were all, this entire nation was close to. But what gives me comfort is that, Madiba was such an absolute planner. And in my head, I think he planned it. When he was really very ill, and we all thought he had died, he decided that that wasn't the right moment because perhaps we were a little bit too emotional at that moment. So he gave us a couple more months, and I really think he gave the nation an opportunity to settle down, to understand that he's 95 years old and that he needed to rest.
Yeah.
And so I comfort myself with that, and I say, okay, but he gave us so much, and I must say personally, just every day a little memory flashes by, and it's a good thing. We're celebrating, and we're celebrating a great, great man.
Yeah, we're actually we're about to cross away from our SABC3 viewers in just a few minutes' time, and I don't want them to go because they can tune into. Please stay with us on SABC1 and SABC2 as well. But just give a message to the nation at a time like this.
I think that Madiba's courage and strength is what should hold us together. His great, great desire was for South Africa to be a single nation who accepts each other's diversity. If we remember him in his T-shirt with the number 10 rugby shirt on, that's Madiba.
Yeah.
Walking into a stadium, into a rugby stadium when everybody thought rugby was for one particular set of South Africans. He said, no, this is a game. It's our game. It's our World Cup.
Yeah.
Madiba's life was about uniting people.
All right. I'm going to just say goodbye to our SABC3 viewers now. You continue to watch us, please, on SABC2 and SABC1, as well as Channel 404 on Channel DSTV for this continued broadcast on SABC. Thank you very much for staying with us, and we're going to continue to talk to our special guest that's in studio with us now, the Deputy Secretary of the Secretary General of the ANC, Jessie Duarte, and this is just a continuing dedication of the life and times of Tata Madiba. You must be exhausted. You were just telling me now you haven't slept.
Well, I think little bits of sleep, I think, is important. We've all had. But I think the important thing is that we're determined to plan the most dignified and proper send-off for Madiba. And I think we've also been, throughout the country, people have been calling the ANC office from all over the world and all over the country, asking for details. And so we've had to stay up to answer calls and so on. And I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an energy that just keeps you going. And we don't mind.
Yeah.
This is for Madiba.
How's the process going? I mean, I would imagine the logistical planning behind it is quite intense.
Well, the plan is in place.
Yeah.
And as we all know that there's a prayer day service on Sunday, which we're leaving to people to organize in their own way, a day of national prayers.
Yeah.
Anywhere you are, in your community, in your own church, in your own temple, synagogue or mosque, a day of prayer on Sunday. And then on Tuesday, there's a official memorial, which is at the FNB Stadium. And obviously to that, whoever comes.
Yeah.
And then Madiba lays in state on Wednesday for dignitaries from other countries. There will be a number of heads of state arriving. I'm not sure who yet.
Okay.
And then on the next 2 days after that, he still lays in state, and South Africans are invited to the union buildings to go and view. And then on the 14th, finally, Madiba will depart for Kunu, where he will be taken home. And the resting place is Kunu. That was his desire.
Yes.
And he'll go home. On the 15th will be a state funeral, which is run by the state. But yeah, I think everything is in place, and it's working well.
Yeah.
And the anticipation is that we will have quite a number of heads of state. We already know that President and Mrs. Obama have made an indication of their desire to come.
Is that to the funeral or the memorial?
Well, they will confirm which one they will attend,
Okay.
but at this point in time, what we know is that he's confirmed a desire to attend, so we are expecting him.
Good.
As
I
a
know
country.
that together in that statement was also the former President Bush, as well as his wife.
Yes.
And Bill Clinton
And
also.
Bill Clinton, as you
Yeah.
know, Madiba and Bill Clinton had a very special friendship, so
Yeah.
we're not expecting him to stay away.
Absolutely. The Brazilian president is another one that has been confirmed.
That's correct. I don't know all the confirmations.
Okay. But from what you're gathering, I mean, it's just...
It's enormous.
It is going to be
Yes.
enormous.
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of South Africans asking, with all the dignitaries coming, the accessibility for the ordinary South African, how does it work at a state funeral? I mean, if people are in the Kunu area, are they able to come, or is it not open to the public?
In the homestead of Madiba, it will be it will be a family and friends. And unfortunately, the homestead is not able to carry large numbers of people, but arrangements are being made for open viewing areas in Umtata and spaces close to the homestead as well. Open viewing areas with television coverage. But because the funeral will be live as well, most people probably will stay at home.
Certainly.
And we think that that's not a bad option for many people, but people want to be where there's a funeral.
Yeah.
So we're anticipating that, and arrangements are being made as best as we can with the spaces available in the Eastern Cape at the Kunu, within the Kunu and Mvezo area.
Yeah. I imagine that the travel logistics have also been organised, because
Yes.
trying to filter the amount of people out into the funeral through the Umtata International Airport, would the other airports also be utilised travelling
Yes,
in there?
all the airports will be utilised, Port Elizabeth and East
East
London. And Umtata Airports has been upgraded. The
Yes.
tarmac has been upgraded, so most planes will be able to land there, but possibly not park there. So those arrangements have also been put in place.
And I also read this morning that SAA have also introduced a lot more flights into the area.
Yes, they have, and they'll have special flights next week, the entire week. That's been arranged. They've said so to us. So hopefully, there'll be enough flights because a lot of people will land in Johannesburg, especially our international guests, will land in Johannesburg and will be taken by further. They'll get from Johannesburg by SAA, many of them. I really don't, the government will give logistical arrangements, I think, on Wednesday. So I think from the ANC side, that's what we've been told, and we're comfortable with what the government is saying, and we're working with them on the project. But it is really a state funeral, so
perhaps possibly the biggest one that this world has ever seen.
I think yes, it's going to be enormous. But the country, every citizen is part of it. Madiba regarded each one of us as part of his family. And I think if one looks at it like that, if you look at this, at who this particular human being was, father of the nation, every child, every woman, every man in this country was part of this man's family. And we can't escape that. And Madiba overlooked race, color, creed, political allegiance. He never left his own political party. He was an NEC member of the ANC right up to the day that he died. But he's not expecting people to stay aloof, and neither are we. So we're hoping that at all the memorial services we'll unite. Let's not think about electioneering right now. Let's think about honoring Madiba.
Okay. Jessie, I want to ask you now, and I want you to drop all of your official protocol. Let's not talk official. Let's talk Jessie to Leanne. Yes. How are you feeling? I mean, because you knew him, you spent time with him. I know you've prepared yourself for it, but we can never prepare ourselves for this moment.
Leanne, I think I don't want to separate myself from everybody I've spoken to. I've lost a friend, a father. I lost somebody that I talk to quite often. I mean, I think that yes, I do feel a sense of loss. But I'm immensely honored that I had an opportunity as a young South African woman to work with this incredible man. I grew immensely in the time that I worked with him. I was a political activist. Madiba was a political strategist. And I think that working together was an immense opportunity for someone as young as I was. He had an absolute ability to nurture people. And he took, I remember one incident. We went to visit a king in the northern province. And when we went into the room, I was behind Madiba, and he said something. I think he greeted him in a traditional way. And I stood really not knowing what to do. Madiba took my hand and said, "This is what you do. You say nda, and you bow your head." And I did exactly that. And it was for me a lesson. And I mean, on many occasions we traveled together quite often. Madiba was also willing to listen and to learn from other people. That made him so great. He had a great humility, almost a sense of innocence at times. He would ask questions in a innocent way. We went with him to Nkosazana Dlamini, and I accompanied him to France, and we went to the Louvre. And then we went to the Versailles Palace with him, and he asked the guide, "Can you tell me how much all this would cost?" And
at the Louvre.
At the Louvre. And to me, this innocence, this sense of a combination of innocence and yet astute political sharpness, and he was a great planner. He had a little always had a Croxley little notebook, journalist notebook, that he carried with him.
Yeah.
And he planned everything. You know, we would sit in the morning and he'd say, you know, I'm going to meet so-and-so. And these are the questions I'm asking. And these are the things I want to know.
Yes.
And he would write that down. And and sometimes it'd be quite spontaneous, you know, but most days he would plan very accurately. He would plan meticulously for the NEC of the ANC. He would plan visits to people that he knew he needed to extract a particular response from. And what I loved about him was when people said, I can't do this for you.
Yeah.
You know, during the CODESA period and pre the CODESA period, we traveled to all the former, what was then the Bantustan areas, to meet with Bantustan leaders, to say, we've got to close the Bantustans. South Africa is one nation. We can't have Bantustans. We've got to move forward. And some were resistant. And what I loved about him was that he didn't take no for an answer. Yeah. And he would say, I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you. This is not something we cannot not do. And he persuaded people. He visited people who were ill in their homes, friends of his. So he wasn't aloof. You know?
Yeah.
When I was ill once, he came to my little home in Rivoli to make sure that I was fine.
Wow.
You know, I just want to give you a sense that Madiba was a very real person.
Yeah.
And so it was very difficult also for people who worked for him to control that realness, you know?
Yes.
Because he just walked off sometimes. Yeah. The big crowd, and he would walk straight into it, and the bodyguards around him would go
mad. I can
crazy.
imagine. Yeah.
And I felt sorry for them because they had to do their job.
Yeah.
And he said, but look, that's your job is to look after me, my job is to talk to the people.
Yes.
You know, so I think he was a father, the father of our nation.
Yeah.
And today, I think, you know, my view is that every South African should feel that we were given a foundation by a very wonderful man who incidentally never received the accolades only for himself. He remembered that it was Oliver Tambo and the NEC of Oliver Tambo who used him as a symbol in the international community to show the story of South Africa. And that he recognizes that in all his books. And he recognized that personally, that he became the face of South Africa's struggle because a strategic decision was taken by Oliver Tambo, whom he respected greatly.
Yeah.
Walter Sisulu, whom he loved and respected greatly. Ahmed Kathrada, whom he loved and respected greatly. Madiba took absolutely no decisions that I can recall of note, that he didn't consult the former Rivonia trialists of, and while Uncle Oliver was alive, consulted him regularly.
Yeah.
You know, on important matters.
Yeah. And he's now. The most amazing thing is we think of that interview that we've played over and over when it was with the Rivonia trialists, and he is saying that when he gets up to heaven, wherever he goes, he's going to go and form his own political
branch.
But that's it, his own branch. So he's hard at work already.
He's hard at work. He's gathering. He's joining the ANC branch.
He is. He is. They're all there with them.
With all of them, and Umgov and all of them. So Madiba is, you know, I say I suppose, because in my heart and in the hearts of 50 million South Africans, he's going to live on.
Yeah, never. This memory is never going to be forgiven. You know, I have this vision for while I'm sitting and I'm talking to you, and I look at him, and everybody talks about, and it's the most overwhelming thing when you did meet Madiba, how big he was.
Yes.
His hands and how tall he was. He must have given the best hugs.
Oh, he did.
I had to ask you because you're short and you're small, so he must have cuddled you.
Oh, yes, he did. I mean, you felt that he just took over your entire life. Well, you know, he did, because we, Barbara Masikela, Frene Jinwala, and myself, we didn't have a life while we worked for him.
Yeah.
We worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You know, and he also, I think the remarkable thing about Madiba, he was a man of his age, came from patriarchal beginnings, was in the ANC, which had very patriarchal views,
Yeah.
and in many instances there are still entrenched patriarchal perspectives, was able to put the gender question firmly on the table.
That's it. And surround himself with very powerful women.
And said, the country can't go forward if half of our population is excluded from decision making, if half of our population, which are women, are not considered in the laws that we make to protect them from exploitation. Those are Madiba's words, not mine, you know. And I must say that was, I thought, that was quite a trying time for him as well, because he had to persuade people who spoke the gender language, were very articulate in it, but didn't quite believe it was, we were ready yet, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, are we really ready for all these women? Madiba believed, and so he appointed women as premiers as well. Amazing. He had no problem. I went with him to meet Winnie Direko, for example, Winky Direko.
Yeah.
And she was a school teacher when we met her, and we walked away and he said to me, after the elections, that lady is going to have to lead in the province.
Sure. Isn't that amazing?
Strong woman,
yeah.
you know.
He had a massive respect for women in his life, no doubt.
He did. And I think, you know, he's always had very strong women in his life. His first wife was a very strong woman.
Evelyn?
Evelyn was a strong woman in her own quiet way.
Yeah.
Winnie is an incredible woman, whom I really, you know, Madiba loved Winnie.
Yeah.
Absolutely, intensely.
How is Winnie?
She is grieving.
Yeah.
The family is grieving as a whole. Grasa is grieving. They are together, and they're you know, it's hard to see Winnie grieving in this way, but she is grieving.
And Grasa obviously
they both
by
grieving.
his side. I mean,
all the
whole
time. Grasa spent a lot of time at his side. So did Winnie in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I think this is again Madiba. He united his family before he left, made sure that everybody would be together, you know.
Yeah.
And I hope that that continues for all of us. That's a hope that we have. Yeah.
I know that his daughters as well. I know Zinzi was, and I think there was I'm not sure, but I know Zinzi was in. She was actually in London at the premiere when it happened, and had to be called out of the cinema while she was watching it.
Yes.
They're back in South Africa.
Yes.
How are they doing?
I haven't seen them, but I know they're all taking
they're all
this pretty
together.
hard. I mean, this is a family who had a father who loved each one of them.
Yeah. Well, Jessie, it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you. Thank you for talking to us. I know it's a difficult time, but at the same time...
But let's not grieve too much. Let's celebrate this wonderful man.
Absolutely. And what he has done for us. And these beautiful memories. 95 years old. That is a life lived and a beautiful time here that we had with him. Unfortunately, not long enough because of the amount of time that he spent away from us. But the time we did have with him, look at what he achieved. Music was something that was certainly close to him. Jessie, I mean,
yes,
you know that.
He loved music.
He loved music.
Yes.
I mean, look at this. Now, this has to be one of the greatest songs. Johnny Clegg, this song, Asibonanya. Have a look. Oh, how was that? Was that not absolutely unbelievable? I think if you don't have tears in your eyes after watching that, oh my goodness, that was absolutely beautiful. Jessie Clegg, and then joined on stage by Madiba himself. I mean, that was, I think if you go onto YouTube and you see how many times that video has been viewed, it's, I'm sure, thousands by now, tens of thousands of times. My next guest that's going to talk to us and reminisce. Look at this, Ronnie Kasrils, you've come into the studio. How are you doing?
One's buoyed up by the celebration that's spreading throughout our country.
Yeah. Is it celebration? Is that what you? Is
Yes.
that the feeling that you
So
you get?
strongly. I mean, like everybody else, Leanne,
Yeah.
we expected this. It had to happen. And when it did, one felt such pain throughout one's every being. And the memories came flooding in, and it was always that smiling feature of Madiba. Last night, I was outside the Houghton home being interviewed by foreign TV.
Yeah.
And I had to keep raising my voice because of the freedom songs
Yes.
and the toy-toying.
Yeah.
And it just struck me. They asked me, what's the mood in South Africa? And I said, it's not deep mourning.
No.
This is becoming a celebration of the man's life.
Yeah.
And this is the African way. It's very South African. And I made the point that those freedom songs, which we're hearing everywhere, were what kept us going to a certain degree. Of course, it was our commitment. It was what we were serving. It was the people like Madiba and Walter and Govan and others in the prisons and those who had been executed. But in the camps in Angola, I remember celebrating the 60th birthday of Madiba in 1978.
Yeah.
And it was all about songs and freeing Madiba, and we had our sports days, etc. But this is what's infusing the nation and giving us such strength to cope at this difficult time.
Yeah. Let's talk about your history with Mandela and your involvement in the movement. And I mean, if we go back to the Sharpeville massacre, I think that's, you know, that's been highlighted as a time that I think the word is radicalized you. Is that what really?
Yes, for
that's
sure.
what changed you.
Sure, 20-year-old. I detested racism, which we saw on the streets as I grew up. And Sharpeville, I'd already crossed the colour bar line when I left school, with the musicians, with the mixed race parties, with the poetry and so on. And it was Sharpeville that made me seek the ANC. And I was soon involved, and I was in Umkhonto we right from the beginning, and I'd seen Madiba from afar. and he spoke in Maritzburg at the All-African Conference, and I couldn't go from Durban because it was purportedly only for indigenous African people.
Yeah.
But a couple of friends I knew had managed to go, and when they came back and they spoke about Madiba and how big he was on that stage and how he inspired them, I felt so envious. Why hadn't I gone? I was soon in MK, and on this day in July 1962, that was just a couple of weeks before his arrest at Howick, Madiba came to meet us in a safe house. I was with the regional command. I was a member with Billy Naya, Koenig and Lovo, Eric and Charlie, and in strode Madiba.
Yeah.
And he had just got back from his training in Morocco and his visit to Ethiopia and elsewhere in Africa. And you know the pictures of Madiba at that time, that TV interview about why we had adopted the armed struggle, because there was no other possibility of change in the face of the bannings, the repression, the tyranny. And he came in, and for an hour or so we were speaking, giving him reports, hearing from him about the situation in Africa and what was expected of us in MK, and he hadn't smiled once. Wow. He was very, very serious and somber. And then at the end, we had some tea, coffee, and he was talking to us about the need, this was more informal now, to read about armed struggle, guerrilla warfare, to keep physically fit.
Yeah.
And I was 23 with these much older, seasoned veterans by then, and I suppose wanting to show off. I said to him, well, I was at the university cross-country team, and I was very fit. And he said to me, my boy, you're not fit until you run in that Comrades Marathon. And I said, Madiba, I'm going to prepare for that.
Yeah.
And he said, well, prepare very well, but always keep a step ahead of the special branch. You'll have to be very fast in that. It was ironic because he then got arrested and I managed to evade capture.
Yeah.
Now, 30 years later, we're back in South Africa, and this is in 1994. He appoints me as Deputy Minister of Defence.
Wow.
And this was a month after others had been appointed. So when I was appointed, I had him to myself. I was the only person being sworn in. Of course, Slovo and Modisi and others, and he was there, and the Chief Justice. So I had him to myself, and we were able to chat afterwards. And he talked about how I had once told him I was training for the marathon. And he said, did you ever run it? And I said, no, how could I? I told him I'd run a marathon for him when he turned 60 in the Angolan camps. We had the sports day and we had a marathon, and I didn't do badly against these 1976 kids.
Yes.
But I told him about this, and he said, you know, my boy, there's still time for you. You're not that old, and marathon runners are very seasoned. And I said to him, but Madiba, you've appointed me as Deputy Minister of Defence. I'm not going to find any time
where am I
to
gonna
train.
run? Yeah.
So he said, my boy, what time do you wake up? And I kind of spluttered, 7 o'clock or something. He said, you should join me. 5 o'clock, I go for my walks. You start running. You do your training at 5 o'clock, and you'll be able to run the marathon. Needless to say, I didn't ever do that.
So you've never done it?
No, it was one of the ambitions of my life
That
that I
you
regret.
didn't.
But, you know, let me say about Madiba that to have known him in this way, to have known him in all that seriousness, and at a time in this film, Long Walk, there's an aspect of it that brings us back. People like yourself and the rest of our country who've only known him post-1990 with the reconciliation and so on. The film brings out how tough it was in that period of the ANC leading the struggle with others. It was a collective leadership. It was never Madiba alone, and he never claimed it. And he always said, great leaders and kings and generals don't make change, the ordinary people do. It always emphasized that. But in terms of what he taught us, it was to have courage, to be determined, and at that particular point in time, to take up weapons, not because of a love of violence, which he didn't like, but because there was no other path, no possibility of change. That was what had driven the ANC leadership with the Communist Party, who formed Umkhonto weSizwe, like people in other countries throughout history, when there's no possibility of change, when you don't have the vote, you don't elect a government, when you have a tyranny and it's very, very tough and repressive, that's the way that you need to go. And he was our commander-in-chief, and he was astonishingly courageous and determined, and was prepared to give up his life, as we well know. And that inspired the generations, whether we were involved in Umkhonto or in the armed struggle, or mass political and trade union struggle, or in the religious groups, or the women and the youth groups, the sporting groups, uniting the country, the people abroad, in solidarity actions which helped isolate the apartheid regime. It was the Mandela leadership, Tambo, J.B. Marks, Katani, Walter Sisulu, and so many countless others. He was one of those great stars, and of course, he really stood out.
All right. Ronnie, I think I'm going to ask you to stay on, but I'm not going to continue my interview with you, because I'm going to end this broadcast from myself from here. You are now going to be joined by Ayanda and Mahendra, that are going to be taking over for the next couple of hours, and no doubt they're going to continue the conversation with Ronnie, just talking about some memories of the life and times that you have shared with Madiba. But before I say goodbye, let me quickly cross over to Sam Marshall. He's been at Houghton since the early hours of this morning. That's outside the family home of Mandela here in the Johannesburg area. Let's just get a final word from him.
Good morning, Leanne. Yeah, it's in such an interesting space to be in this morning, because there's just so many people coming through, and you can feel the sadness, but you can also see the smiles in the background. I'm sure you can hear that about half an hour ago, a group of people came here, and they just started singing, started dancing, calling Nelson Mandela, singing his name, getting other people to join them. And I'm going to ask the cameraman just to pan over. Hopefully you can get a sense of just the amount of numbers that have come through in the last kind of hour. So it's really, really has swelled, and there's almost no place here to stand. More and more people coming through, putting their flowers down, lighting their candles, writing their messages, tweeting about this. I'm telling you, it's such a spiritual event to be at the moment. But of course, we'll be covering this event live throughout the day, and this area throughout the day. From us, it's a wrap here. Go back to the studio.
Right, thank you very much, Sam. Thanks for capturing that unbelievable feeling that's happening outside the Houghton home. Gillian Pillay, of course, in Vilakazi Street, and also reporters out in Kunu as well, which we'll be crossing to throughout the day. You continue to stay with us throughout this very special day, another day of mourning here in South Africa. Stay with SABC News as we celebrate and dedicate and commemorate the life and times of Nelson Mandela. From me, goodbye. Ayanda and Mahendra taking over. We'll leave you with a song from Johnny Clegg.
Good morning. You're watching the very special broadcast that commemorates the life and times of former President Nelson Mandela. This is SABC News. We're continuing a long 48-hour coverage of this special day. And we're going to have lots of iconic South Africans who will come and visit us. We'll be joined by my colleague Ayanda Ali Payne, who will be chatting to some of these icons. A little later in the program, we have Super Hot Six Mabusa, who's going to be talking about his music and his role. So we'll come back to you in a short while.
This is Mandela's first television interview.
There is room for all the various races in this country. The Africans want the franchise on the basis of one man, one vote. They want political independence.
No one is born hating another person for the color of their skin, religion, or background. Even in the grimmest times, I have seen glimmers of humanity which reassured me that man's goodness is a flame that can never be extinguished.
Mr. Nelson Mandela